Hello, good morning, everybody. It's time for the next session. So please allow me to share my screen with you. And while I do so, I'm just going to introduce myself to you as well. So my name is Elizabeth Beer, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. I'm just in the process of sharing my screen with you. 1 second. And then we'll get going. I'm sure you've had a fantastic morning so far, finding out all about visible thinking routines with Majda. And now I'm just going to take that forward with you now with a few ideas for how we can put that into our classes. I love reading your messages on the chat box. So please feel free to say, I can see you saying hello to me. Hello to everybody out there. It's so nice to see who you are and where you're from. So please say hi. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop your questions in the chat box as we go. If I have the time, I will answer them. If not, don't worry, there is some time at the end of the session for you to ask your questions as well. So without further ado, let's begin. So this session is about helping your teenage students to organize and present their ideas confidently using these visible thinking activities. And as I say, my name is Elizabeth Beer, and I'm a Pearson teacher, trainer, and presenter and blog post writer. Today's session will cover a brief look at the concept, because I realize that some of you have attended the session this morning where Majda really went into the sort of what was going on and what these are. But I'm just going to briefly go over that again in case we have some people joining us now. Then I want to look at, well, when do we introduce these routines? How to recognize a moment in our course book where it would be really useful. And then finally, I'm just going to show you lots of different visible thinking activities and how we can set them up in our classes. Feel free to take screenshots of any activities I've given you. Feel free to write things down. The session is being recorded as well so that you can revisit any ideas. So let's get to it then. What is visible thinking? Okay, well, visible thinking has been with us all throughout history. It's a way for us to communicate what exactly we're thinking and feeling. So if we think about the history, we've got our cave paintings where our ancestors were trying to put down in a visual form the things that were on their mind. We've also, of course, recognized our hieroglyphs from ancient Egypt, which led us into our own writing techniques as well. And of course, for me, the most famous sort of person that applied these visible thinking routines was Da Vinci himself. That sometimes it's more important for us to show how we're thinking about something than the actual final product. Okay. And as humans, we always change our minds about things. We learn more, we see more. And so for us to be able to either talk through in class or to write down or to visually show our thinking patterns and what stance we have is a very, very important technique for humans. So asking our students to do this in class is nothing strange at all. In fact, we've done it all throughout history. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty then. Let's find out what are visible thinking routines and where did it begin? Well, the main word you need to hear today is something called Project Zero. Okay, and this comes from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and it was an initiative that started in the late 60s. And Professor Goodman noticed that highly capable thinkers routinely use thinking strategies. Okay, so what is that? These routines are becoming observers. So it's okay to not give an opinion at the very beginning. Instead, perhaps we might want to watch the world, observe people, and then come to an opinion. It's the ability to organize our ideas, to see the connections between what we're saying, what we think, and then how we act. We're also going to be using reasoning and logic very carefully and hopefully not in a biased way, in order for us to be able to communicate and be able to function in the world. And the last routine that we're setting up is reflection. How do we make sense of things? How do we categorize? And how do we organize? So these 4 basic concepts are things that we can practice in class and also in the real world. And what's lovely as a teacher is that when you teach your students how to do these things, you also take on board these routines and you find yourself doing it as well when you're out and about and in the world. So it's a really useful technique in general. And just to talk about the further benefits, as a class teacher, why should I be using this? Well, I love it because you can employ these thinking routines and you don't need any previous experience to be able to apply them in class. You don't need to have attended a course. You don't need to have gotten a PhD or a master's. You can apply them directly, and they're very easy to set up. And they have the ability to make complex concepts more accessible to learners. Sometimes when we teach our learners, we might start the course book with a question, why do you think this? And sometimes students are a little bit afraid to sort of say why they think something, or maybe a little bit embarrassed, or they actually don't know how to think through why they believe something. And these activities I'm going to show you today break down the thinking process, and it makes concepts very, very accessible for students to think about and talk about. You'll see later on the activities I'm going to show you that they are super easy to remember and very easy to apply like that in your classes. And they often come in catchy titles of 3 concepts, but I'll go into that a little bit later. And why are we encouraging our students to do this? Well, as I said before, if we can encourage our students to see the world around us, be empathetic, look at things from different viewpoints, organize themselves, these are all life skills in general that are really important for whatever job they choose to do in the future. And it helps our students to not look at things at a surface level, but instead to dig deeper. Now, there might not be a right answer. There might not be a perfect answer, but the act of thinking is very, very important. And of course, we've all heard the concept of critical thinking, looking at other perspectives. We live in a globalized world. We are constantly talking with other people, other cultures, and understanding others, thinking from their perspective. This is all fantastic things. So I love visual thinking routines. And finally, of course, we want our students to develop speaking skills and thinking skills within a group. And so they're going to practice their English and they're going to be more communicative. Today, I'm going to be showing you some coursebook pages from Wider World, or in Spain. If you're from Spain, you'll know this book as Your World, okay? But you can use these visual thinking routines in any coursebook. So here's an example of these visible thinking routines. If you're using the Wider World second edition or Your World, you'll already see them in the coursebook. So this is an example of what visible thinking looks like. And this visible thinking routine is called Connect, Extend, and Challenge. And you're probably doing something similar in your classes already. You're probably giving your students a picture or some words and asking students to brainstorm or to think about things and to connect things to how they think. Well, this is exactly the right thing to do, and this shows you how to do it in a very structured way, okay? And it guides the students into how they should be talking to each other and responding to the topic. Now, before I go on and talk to you more about visible thinking routines, I just want to emphasize, for me as an educator, why I think they're really important. And I just want to show you some statistics very briefly from the United Kingdom. And I'm from England, so this is really, really important to me. This is a report from 2022, so it's very, very recent. And it's from something called Ofcom. You may have heard of it. And it's the Office of Communications in Britain. So it's basically the part of the government that sort of looks at how we communicate with each other. Mobile phones, laptops, and so on. Now, it did a survey on teenagers, and I just want to show you some statistics. So here you are. This is the 12 to 15-year-olds, and it has some positive statistics about, how many people own a mobile phone, what do they do on the mobile phone and on their tablets and so on. But I've circled the things that I've circled the things that concern me a little bit as a teacher. That we only have 11% of that age range that can correctly identify the indicators that a post on social media was genuine. So here we're facing this concept of, as we know, fake news or post-truth, where students are seeing different kinds of statistics and stories, but not all of them are able to correctly identify all the indicators that might make them question the information and how true it is. And Natalia, a great point you're making there, in the face of ChatGPT and the fact that all these AI things can be producing work or words that is not true, this is incredibly important. And of course, at the bottom, I've also circled very low percentages of media manipulation and marketing that not very many students or teenagers, are able to know when they are being sold something. They might just see it as good advice or something that is true. And for me, if we connect this to visible thinking routines, students hopefully will question something, look at the logic of something, perhaps, before they believe it. Now, that's the 12 to 15-year-olds. I'm about to show you the 16 to 18-year-olds. Do you think the 16 to 18-year-olds are better at identifying the social media content and sponsored search results? Do you think they are the same, or do you think they're worse? What do you think? You can tell me in the chat box. Do you think that the older children, 16 to 18, do you think they're going to be better at identifying, about the same, or worse? Okay, so we've got some answers coming in now. You're hoping that they would be better. Yes, you would like to think that. A couple of people think the same. Okay, that's interesting. Lovely. All right. So I think on the whole, I think most of you are saying should be better, but there are a few of you that are saying the same. Nobody thinks that they're going to be worse. Okay, I'm going to show you the answers. Let's check it out. Marginally better by a teeny tiny 13. So compared to 11, it's only now 13%. And compared to 37% before, we've only got 44. 48. So they're just a little bit, but they're still very worrying statistics for me. So to help our students to critique something, to not take something at face value, I think we can help them with these kind of problems that they're going to be facing in the world. Have a look at your own country. Do you have a government organization that takes these kind of questionnaires and statistics? Check it out. Okay, now let's come on to these visible thinking routines. So there are so many visible thinking routines that I am unable to give you all of them today, but I am going to give you lots and lots today. As you can see here, there are many, many, many that help our students to develop their thinking skills. But how do we know when and where to put them into our lessons? Okay, so the obvious question is, when should I be doing this? Okay, when should I be asking my students to have a think and to have a talk with their partners and groups? So I have broken each critical thinking activity down into sort of these subcategories, and I've got 8 categories in total, and I'm going to explain the categories to you now. And once we understand the broad categories, I think we'll be able to identify better in class when we can apply them. So here are the categories now. Okay, so our first category is when we want to introduce a new idea to our students, or even to explore an idea. So of course, that immediately sort of leads me to say, you know, the very beginning of a unit of a book where we often have a picture or a question, we're introducing something new to our students. We can apply some great thinking routines at that moment as well, but not just at the beginning of a course book. There might be an idea that is coming up midway through and you want to explore it, or even you're going to go off the course book and do your own kind of task. Well, then, of course, you can apply it then. Then we might want our students to actually dig deeper into the idea. So you might have done an idea to introduce vocabulary, but then later on in the unit, you're actually asking your students to maybe read something or listen to something where they have to think about a concept in a deeper way. We can employ some of our activities here. Perhaps you're looking at objects, so you're teaching vocabulary, and we might want to think about everyday objects and how people perceive them. And I'll come on to that in a second, what I mean there. Systems refers to how do things work. So maybe you're doing a unit on, for example, transport, and you're looking at a system. How does the bus system work in your town or village? Or maybe you're even looking at policies that your country has, for example, migration policies. Perhaps it's even something from your school that you wish to debate, for example, a school uniform system or policy. And so we can ask our students to be thinking about the rationale for having those kinds of systems in place. Are they fair? Are they equal? And so on. We might want to be asking our students to be looking at things from different perspectives. As I said before, we're living in a globally interconnected world, and it's a really lovely activity for students to be able to look at life from other people's perspectives. And from that, often we have controversies and dilemmas that come up. For example, as I mentioned the word before, migration. If you're the person migrating, you'll probably have a different set of ideas than the person who isn't migrating, and some dilemmas that we're facing globally and controversies that the world is facing. And we want to understand that kind of system. Possibilities and comparisons. This often comes up in our course books where we're asked to compare different things, give reasons why we think something. We're also asking our students to think of different endings to a story or different possibilities that can occur using their creative side. So this is another category, possibilities and comparisons. Then, of course, this whole idea of being able to organize ourselves. So we might have many, many, many different brainstorms and thoughts in our groups and pairs, or even by ourselves. But, you know, how do we make sense of all those thoughts? How do we connect them? And how do we organize them? So being organized for a student, I think, is a really important skill in general. And finally, you might be teaching something artistic to your students. You might be talking about descriptions and colors and shapes. And there are some lovely discussion activities that we can do when we're relating to art. So these are the main categories. So when you come up across something in your course book, try to think, does it sit in one of these categories? Now, we're going to try to identify a category now. I'm going to show you some activities from a course book. And in the chat box, I'd like you to say, what type of category do you think you might apply? Now, I know I haven't shown you the visible thinking activities yet, but it's just to try to identify what direction you should be looking in if you're going to do these kind of things in your course book. And I will say some of them do cross over. So for example, if you've put perspective taking and someone else has written perspectives, controversies and dilemmas, then, you know, there's some crossover there. All right. So let's give it a try. Imagine this is your course book. This is the beginning of a unit, and it's all about homes and where people live. And we've got a lovely photograph. What kind of category do you think you might apply as a visible thinking routine? Put it in the chat box for me. What do you think? Okay, Strinka says perspectives and exactly, perspective, how people are living in different parts of the world. We are very good, Mariana. She says comparison. Yeah, my house definitely does not look the same as this house. So we might want to be thinking of a comparison style one. Perspectives, absolutely. All of them. Well, you do have a point. A lot of these activities can overlap, which is nice when we're a teacher. We've got lots of things to choose from and we don't really go wrong. Yes, Rosa, introducing and exploring ideas. Exactly. This might be the first time that your students have seen a house on stilts in the water. So we want to be introducing different ways of living. Great. Okay, good. So as you can see, it can fall into different categories, and that's okay. As long as we as the teacher are quite clear where we want to be guiding our students, that's fine. And from there, we can choose an appropriate task from that category. And I'll show you some of these tasks later on. Okay, next one. So we've got now art and objects. Which category do you think you might relate this one to? I think I might have just given you the answer there by my introduction. Okay, comparing. Yes, so we can also do comparing objects with each of those, and comparing the objects to how we are today, because I don't wear shoes and collars like this now. Yes, art and objects. Elena, you heard me say it. Absolutely. I absolutely would put it under arts and objects as well. Okay, good, nice. Comparing arts and objects, lovely. Okay, now here's the next one. This is about transport and how eco-friendly would it be to travel from London to Edinburgh. So which one do you think you might apply? Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Nadicha? Objects and systems, absolutely. A system of transport, lovely. Comparing, lovely. Ava, yeah, you're going to be comparing different types of transports. Yes, objects and systems. Yeah, okay, Elena, we might be exploring different ideas. That's right. So finding out which one is the most eco-friendly. Digging deeper, Lenka, absolutely, because students might have an impression. Oh, you know, the most eco-friendly is the train because it's electric. But how true is that? We need to dig deeper. So great, lovely, good. And here's our final one today. This is typical from our course book. We've done some work on crime and punishments. And then at the end, we're going to do discussion in pairs. But what thinking routine could we put in place instead of these questions? Yes. Yeah, okay, dilemmas, absolutely, because you're asking someone to give a type of punishment, and we want to be looking at what the criminal has done, what will they do the crime again? Perspectives, absolutely. If you're a person who has had a crime happen to you, perhaps you're going to be stricter than someone who hasn't. Absolutely, digging deeper into ideas, totally. And also it's a dilemma, controversies and dilemmas. I love it. You're correctly identifying all of them, and it's fine to have some crossover. You will find that some of the routines can be applied to different categories. So once we've learned about 10 of these, we can apply them to pretty much all of our categories today. So that's great. Well done. So the main message I'm communicating here is don't just throw a routine or a visible thinking routine at a student in your classes. You have to decide where do you think it would fit best in the lesson plan and what type of activity you're going to be choosing. So it's time to look at some of these ideas and how we can set them up and do them in class. So this is the fun part for me, the actual teaching part now. Okay, I'm going to take each of those boxes one by one, and I'm going to introduce some ideas to you. And you've probably heard some of these ideas before, and if you haven't, that's fine. Before I begin and explain all of them, you are very, very welcome to choose how to set them up. For example, you might want a student to do something by themselves to start with. They might want to, as we've got the title here, see, think, and wonder by themselves before they then communicate their ideas to a partner, a group, or you. You might want students to work in pairs. You might want them to work in small groups. Perhaps you want them to talk and only talk. Perhaps you want them to write some ideas down, and in which case, how are they doing that? Are they doing it on the chalkboard, on the whiteboard? Are they doing it in their notebooks? Are they doing it on sticky paper and coming to stick it under different categories on your board or on pieces of paper? You can still be creative you in class. You can still be that teacher. But I'm just going to show you the mechanics of how to set these up, but it's very much your choice how you go ahead and put them in place. So our first one is called See, Think, and Wonder. So it's nice and catchy. 3 words, 3 things our students have to do. So Imagine our unit on crime and criminals again. Here's our picture. Here's our lead in. And so, instead of showing students my picture and saying, what's going on, what's happening here. Yeah, I've got a very structured set of questions for them to answer. What do you see? So I'm getting from them vocabulary. And I'm listening as a teacher to see if they're missing any vocabulary, and in which case I can lead in and help them to learn that new vocab. So I'm sort of hearing what they're saying. Then we've got the perspective. What do you think about that? Okay. So what's your reaction to that? Do you think it could be a moral thing? Do you think it's good, bad, worrying? Do you think it's common? Do you think it's uncommon? Do you think it's likely, unlikely? Anything. Students can say anything that they're thinking. And then finally, what does it make you wonder? And it's taking students to the next step now. Okay. And it's asking them to provide bigger questions or bigger doubts. For example, I wonder what they were doing because he's leaving the house and he doesn't have any of the items. So I wonder what he was doing. I wonder if he got interrupted. I wonder if the police are coming. I wonder if he was looking for something specific. Lots of things our students can be wondering. And from there, we get an amazing set of discussion, okay? And students thinking wider about the topic. So they're not looking at it in a narrow way, it's nice and wide. So that's see, think, and wonder. Our next one is called 3, 2, 1 bridge. And this is an activity that you start an idea with, but you do come back later and revisit. Okay, so I'm going to show you what it looks like here. So we've got 2 phases. We've got before learning, and then at the end, we're going to come back after learning. So we're asking our students, first of all, before they learn anything, so maybe looking at that picture of crimes and criminals there, the man that was robbing the house. Before we go into our topic, we're asking our students to write down 3 words or ideas they have about the picture, 2 questions they want to find out, and then language generation, a metaphor or a simile. So that's connecting ideas from other places. Metaphors and similes are comparing. For example, that man is as dangerous as a snake, for example. Okay. That man looks like he something or other. Okay. So it's connecting from other parts of the world and other things that we know. Then we've got this idea of a bridge. And then we're going to come back to this idea after we've learned. Do we have anything the same or different? Do we have 3 more words or ideas about it? Now we know more about the topic. Are our questions the same or different? Can we answer our questions from before? And do we want to have the same simile? Or perhaps maybe we're more sympathetic to the criminal. Maybe we found out that the person was desperate, okay? And this is the section of the bridge where students are going to explain how their perspective may or may not have changed since the beginning of the unit. And here's a worksheet for you. This is from a website called Toddle. It's down there on the left, and it's called 20 Visible Thinking Power Sheets. They give it to you as a PDF for free, and you can use these in your classes. And I'm going to be using some more of these later on. But please visit their website, Toddle, and it's very, very good. Now, be very aware of paper use and environmentally friendly techniques. Perhaps you can simply project this onto the board for students to then discuss or write down in their own notebooks or sticky notes, okay? Maybe we don't need to be printing 30 of them off, okay? So this is a nice way in which to organize a student's ideas. And then we can also employ a routine called compass points. So compass points takes inspiration from the points of a compass: north, south, east, and west. Okay, so N on the right side, what do you need to know? Okay, or find out about this idea. So if it's the man breaking into the house, there's lots of things we need to know about this picture before we perhaps make a judgment. What excites you about this idea? Is there anything exciting? Is there anything positive about this? Maybe not about the criminal. Coming on to S, what is your stance or opinion on this? What suggestions can you make about this? What could the next step be? And then finally, W is worrisome. What do you find worrisome? What are any downsides? So it might be about a picture, or it might just be about a concept in general that you're introducing. For example, if you're about to prepare your students for a class debate on something, this could be a nice way for them to organize their ideas before they talk. Okay, so that's 3 ideas for introducing an idea. Now, what about digging deeper into an idea? The first activity you can do for digging deeper is something called claim, support, and then question. Okay, so here we go. We've got from our book an activity here, and it says in the question, which means of transport do you think is best? Okay, so now I absolutely love trams. Love trams. So I'm just going to automatically, as a reflex, say trams because I enjoy them. But what criteria am I judging my opinion on? So this is where we're asking our students to dig a little deeper into their opinions. Okay, now with transport, this is quite a neutral stance to do. But once students get into this idea, we can then level up and maybe talk about things that are a bit more worrying in the world, something like poverty or lack of housing or pollution, okay? But for now, we're going to do transport. So for me, I'm going to say trams. Okay, great. But we need to back up our ideas. We can't just have an opinion and it floats around. We actually have to have some evidence and some critical thinking involved. So again, this lovely Toddle worksheet has got it all planned out for you here. So our guiding question is that, which means of transport do you think is best? And then students can either work by themselves, pairs, small groups, and they have to provide an answer. So for me, my answer would be trams. And then what's my evidence? I've got to now go find out why I think trams are the best way of getting around a city. And I have to prove my claim. But maybe in my search for evidence, I might actually find that it is actually electric buses that are probably the best way to get around. And it's okay to change my idea and it's okay to change my claim. Remember, it's more important that work we put into thinking than the final idea. Okay. And then finally, we've got this reasoning, justifying your evidence and how it supports your claim. Okay. Because very often in life, we see people that have an opinion, but then when we ask them to justify that or give us reasons or examples, they can't. So your students are going to be very, very good thinkers and explainers if they're able to get into the routine of finding evidence, memorizing the evidence, and then justifying what they think. Okay, another thing we can ask our students to do is to look at things from different viewpoints. And this activity is called Circle of Viewpoints. This is an activity I like to do in class. This is taken from the New York Times, and it's a teaching tool, and it's called What's Going On in This Picture? Now, the New York Times, if you go to it, very often tries to get you to subscribe to it. It will say from time to time, oh, you've read your 2 articles for free this month, now subscribe. But this particular resource is free because it's an education resource. So you've got to, move around those barriers and then come onto the website, and then you'll be able to click on different pictures. Now, what they do is they provide a picture that has been topical in the news, but they don't give any kind of context. You can later uncover the context and explain to your students, or let your students find out what actually is going on. But at the beginning, of course, we want to provoke a discussion. What do students imagine is going on in this picture? Why are people queuing up with what looks like petrol cans? And especially, why is there a little kid in this queue as well? What's going on in the picture? So once we've done our sort of looking at the vocabulary, what they think is going on, we then want to think about perspectives. How are the people in this queue feeling? So we might want to focus on someone in the picture, perhaps the little boy in this case. And we've got this circle of viewpoints here. So in question 1, top left, I am thinking of, and you can name the event or the issue. For example, I'm thinking of why these people are queuing for petrol from the point of view of the little boy. Okay, so maybe in number 2, we're now going to describe the topic from the boy's viewpoint. Maybe the boy is thinking, why am I queuing up for petrol? I should be playing football with my friends. It's a Saturday morning, but I know that my parents really need this. Maybe I need to sell this to tourists so that we can have dinner later on. So there's many different perspectives we can look at, okay? And then explaining and justifying our reason. And then a question or concern, number 3, a question or concern I have from my viewpoint is, will my life continue to be this way? Is it always going to be my job for my family to do this? Are we going to move homes and go live abroad? What's a question or concern I have from the perspective of the child? This type of activity is also really nice for students to work on in groups as well. A nice big A3 piece of card, a nice big circle, and students are working on different sections of the circle together. And then another activity we can introduce here is something called perceive, know, and care. And it's these 3 questions that we're asking our students to answer. What can the person or thing perceive? So what can they see? Okay, what can they see in the context that we're giving? So they can see a long line of people. They can see that this petrol is really important. They can see that many people are giving up their time. Okay, what might the person know about or believe? Okay, so do they understand why they're queuing? What do they believe is happening? And then finally, what might the person or thing care about? Do they care that they get the petrol? Or don't they care? Do they care that they're missing football with their friends? What do they care about? So it's trying to understand different ways of living in different parts of the world, what someone's life might be like, how they're thinking and how they're feeling. And it's really developing those empathy skills that I think are really important in life. So as you can see, we're at number 2 now. And as you can see, all these titles are quite catchy, claim, support, question, perceive, know, care. So there's usually 3 steps that go with it, and they're fairly similar as well. So choose the 1 or 2 that you really like and catches your attention as a teacher, and then go ahead from there. You don't have to introduce all of these. You can choose your favorites. Okay, now we're going to come on to this idea of the objects and systems. So remember, I said that we're asking our students to understand how a system works. For example, how does the bus system work? Or understanding a policy and a system of rules and regulations. Or maybe they're actually understanding an everyday object and why that everyday object is in use, and how people view it as important. So this is connected to my perspective and other perspectives. So this is great. This is a great activity where you choose an object or a system and you ask these questions. First of all, from my perspective, let's imagine we're talking simply about a pen, perhaps. Have you ever used it? Why do you use it? What do you like about it? All these lovely personalization questions, which is great for students. They love talking about things in a personal way. And then imagining the final question: how would your life be different if you couldn't use this, if you couldn't use a pen? Well, the imagination is limitless there. Then we're going to go and be empathetic and look at things from another perspective. Who else uses this? It could be someone in your town, school, but we can go global as well. What do you think other people like about it? How could their life be different? And I often use this activity with, as I say, systems. So here we've got transport system here, but also introducing new vocabulary. So here on the right, I've got vocabulary to do with technology, and we might just stop, choose one of these pictures, every pair or group or individual could choose a different picture, it doesn't matter. And then we can ask and answer these questions to really, because a lot of students, I think, and the world in general, often take things for granted. My mobile phone is 2 years old. Well, I'll just go get another one. The new iPhone's out. Well, I better go get that. And sometimes we don't really think about the value of something and why it's important in our lives and how important it could be for other people. So especially with technology, stop, think, and really delve into an idea. I think it's quite nice. Now, I want to show you another website that I use that's really fun, and it's the British Council Learn English Teens website, and it's called What Is It? So they take an everyday object and they zoom way into a particular object, and students have to try to guess what the object is. So here's a picture for you. You're very welcome to come to the chat box now. What do you think this is a picture of? Okay, there's lots and lots of pictures on the British Council website. It's a really good one. And you can introduce a picture every week and get your students talking if you like. But come to the chat box. What do you think this is a picture of? What object have we zoomed in on? Oh, I can hear you thinking from across the lands. I can hear the cogs turning as you're thinking, what is that? Oh, Katarina, that's a really good guess. Nice. Okay, a lot of you were thinking the same. Yeah, Monica thinks the same. Elena, Katarina, yeah, nice. Oh, a diary cover. Well done, Cassia. Nice, okay. Nina, that's clever. Yeah, okay. So, of course, the nice thing about this is we're obviously going to put on our whiteboard, starting sentences to help our students. I think it is. I reckon it is. It may be. It might be. It could be. I'm not sure, but, all this lovely language that's used for speculation, all these lovely modal verbs as well. And it gets our students thinking. None of you that I have seen so far have managed to guess it. I will give you one little clue and then I'll show you the answer. It's something connected with technology because we've been talking about technology. What do you think it might be? It's not a phone case. It's not a tablet, but these are great guesses. Oh, Anna, that's ever so specific. The speaker of a phone. Microchip, Natalia. Oh, we're getting closer, we're getting closer. I'm going to show you the answer. It is part of a memory stick, part of a USB stick right there. Whoa, that was difficult, wasn't it? Absolutely difficult. Sorry, Natalia. Sorry, I was being very, very difficult with this picture here. But the reason why it's so vague is for students to practice all this language, okay? So once we've done this fun activity and we've got our object, we can then introduce our questions for students to really think about the value of this object, why we're using it, why is it important? Now, let's imagine we've got this USB stick. We can also introduce an activity called Imagine If. So, in what ways could it be made more effective? Can a USB stick have even more memory? Can we have a terabyte yet on a memory stick? In what ways could it be made to be more efficient? I work from an Apple laptop and it doesn't have the USB port anymore. So maybe it could be more efficient with a different connector. Could it be made more ethical? A lot of machinery nowadays is used with rare earth materials. Can it be made more ethical? Does it have to have plastic surrounding it? In what ways could it be made to be more beautiful? Can it have a picture of your family? Can you make it personalized? So asking your students to think about an object and then can they improve upon it perhaps? Can they challenge the way that it's being made or produced? And then we've also got another activity called playing with roles. And of course, we know this better as teachers as role play. So again, nothing that we don't do already. So let me show you a picture here. This is taken from Agency by Design. And this is a system here with how to implement this activity. So we choose a system or an object. For example, if we choose our system, I've been talking about bus systems. Okay, great. We're then going to visually map out the people in the system. Not just the bus drivers and the passengers, the manager of the bus driver, the company that runs the buses, the government that gives the contract to the people that run the buses. There's lots of different connections here we can make, okay? And then from there, we're going to choose one of those roles. We're going to be the government that makes the decision versus the people perhaps who are not happy with the service, okay? And then we want to go and do some role plays around that. Can we listen to each other, maybe change the system in some way? And then here, in the second point, I just want to point out to you here, this visually map the system. If you've got very techie students who enjoy doing design, you can make an infographic with them. And an infographic looks something like this. I'm sure you've seen plenty of them. And a favorite website of mine is called Ditch That Textbook. And bless the man behind this, I can't remember his name now, but he has created on using Google. So if you happen to have Google, an ability for you to copy over a pre-made infographic template. So he's got the lines at the top, at the bottom, the boxes, on the right, some symbols, and it saves you a ton of work. And you can ask your students, thank you, Matt. So you can ask your students to make an infographic about people in the system very quickly, okay? You can also do it by hand, of course you can, or sticky notes with arrows. But if your students are really creative, you know, and they can do it for homework maybe. And then on the website as well, you can also do a more simplified way with boxes, one after the other, a gallery of ideas, a treasure map. So it's very, very creative, okay? It's a great website. There's many more things that he does, so do check it out, okay? But that's what I use it for, is infographics. Okay, I'm going to combine now perspective taking and perspectives, controversies and dilemmas, because there's some overlap here as well, because a lot of times when we give a perspective, it tends to be about something controversial. So the first one I want to introduce to you is a concept called stop, look, listen. It sounds like crossing the road and traffic, but it's a little bit different. So here's our unit. This is our book. We're talking about different types of education. And then at the end, we're going to be asking our students to decide what type of education is best. By that, I mean, are you being educated from home? Are you being educated in a school that's very strict and asking you to do things at certain times? Is it a school where you are choosing more or less your own timetable and how you study? So different ways of being educated. Now, stop, look, and listen is that. Stop. Be clear about your claim. If your claim is it is better to be taught from home by your parents, okay, be clear about that. What exactly do you think is the best way of doing that? At what time? By who? When? Look, find your sources. How can you justify that? Go on and maybe on the internet, or go to the library, find out ways in which you can justify your idea. Consider obvious online and non-obvious places. Maybe libraries now are non-obvious. And then this is the most important part. Listen. Take what you learn and think. Is this absolutely true? Is this biased? Will this person's perspective affect my fact-finding information? So again, it's going back to that idea of teenagers not being able to identify and critically think about things that they see on the website. So here, this listen part is, you know, is your source where you're getting your statistics from a reputable source? We've also can employ a strategy called the 4 C's. Now, this is really nice, especially when perhaps you might have read an article or a text that's been challenging some perspectives, or maybe listened to something. And then from there, we say, what connections can we draw between our life? Again, this empathy, this connecting between the globalized world. Is there anything in the text that you actually want to challenge or argue because you understand, believe, or even know that the information is perhaps not true or not accurate, which is great? What concepts have you learnt from the text that you think are key to remember and to hold on to and to think about? And then, are there any changes that the text suggests you make? So this could be applied to a story, if you're doing stories with your students, bigger ideas, more ethical style texts as well. And then we've got an activity here called true, but for who? Okay, so again, it's understanding perspectives. Okay, everybody has an opinion, everybody makes a claim, but we're often having an opinion and a claim from our own interests. Okay, so it's asking our students to look at what is being claimed, either through a picture or through a text, and then say, okay, but what was at stake for them? Why were they saying that? Brainstorm a list of different points of view. So if we are looking at a concept such as poverty, we might want to be looking at points of view from the government, from the people who are poor, from people who work hard and are poor, from people who don't work and don't want to work at all, and so on. All these different perspectives, okay? Dramatize it, do role plays, okay? Do dialogues from that person's perspective, okay? And here's some language to help you do that. I think this claim is true. What would convince me to change my mind is. And then finally, once we've done our role plays, we all step back as a group. And then we take everything into account and we come up with our own personal stance or conclusion, or even further questions. If we cannot quite put our finger on what our stance is yet, we might be able to generate further questions that we want to go find out. And this is, again, a nice little worksheet as well. This is on the Project Zero website about writing down different viewpoints, their stance and their reasons. And then the circle at the bottom is finally your final viewpoint and stance about something, okay? Let's come on now to possibilities and comparisons. So the first one is called creative questions. And again, we do this in class. So creative questions is looking at a particular topic and brainstorming questions about it, especially hypothetical ones. Suppose that, what would change if X happened? What would it be like if, and so on, okay? And then we're asking our students to take that one step further by being creative. So maybe from that, they're going to write a story or an essay based on that question, role play, dialogue, anything. It's asking your students you can ask your students to choose themselves what kind of final project they would like to do, okay? And then at the end, once we've seen everybody's work and had a discussion about it, then we all can reflect on different ideas. This is also brilliant to help with vocabulary as well, okay? So it might be that we're learning our vocabulary, we might pick a noun, and then from there we're going to be all, for example, here we've got holiday equipment, suitcase, rucksack, we can ask those questions about our new vocabulary and think about different situations. What would happen if we didn't have that? What would we do if, and so on. And then the next activity you could try is called Creative Question Starts. It's very, very similar to Creative Questions, but we're just providing the starting word, and then students go off and make their own questions about that. As you can see throughout all of these activities I'm giving you, there's hardly any preparation on your part. They're very easy to set up once you've got the hang of it, okay? So they can work very seamlessly into your lesson plans and not really disrupt a lot of the language that you want to teach your students. Okay, on to the next one now. Organizing and synthesizing our ideas, okay? So this one is a bit of a longer title. It's 4 words now. Generate, sort, elaborate, and connect, okay? So again, back to the Toddle worksheets here. Generate, again, so what's your initial response to an idea or a topic, okay? Then can you sort those ideas out? How connected are your ideas to the main idea or topic, So the generate one is letting your students go absolutely wild, writing down anything that comes into their brain, but then they have to sort it, okay? And then if they work together in pairs, then from pairs into groups and then changing groups, then they need to, they get exposed to other ideas, and then they can elaborate. Do they have any new ideas? Are any new connections coming through from what other students are saying? Okay. And then finally, connecting those ideas all together. So if one student has said this word or this idea, can we make connections and bring them together? Okay. So it's really nice. It's quite an artistic one. If you let your students on a big piece of paper, brainstorming ideas, discussing, drawing lines, and then when that looks a bit chaotic, connecting and drawing lines, over we go to the infographic, for example. So they're actually organizing their ideas in a clear way. The next one is called color, symbol, and image. This is a really artistic one. If you've been reading a story or a text, or you've been looking at a particular idea, we're going to represent this idea with a color. And then we have to write down, why did we choose this color? So if we've been looking at the topic of migration, maybe we want to choose, I don't know, a red color because we're worried, or a green color because people are migrating now because of the environment, you know, up to the student. A symbol, they have to draw a symbol that they think represents this idea. And then draw an image. And again, underneath, telling us why that they have selected this. Okay, so it's thinking more creatively and understanding our world creatively. And this is an example of a student who's chosen a color, chosen a symbol, and then finally represented it in an image and written why. And another activity, very, very easy, is called, excuse me, I think you can hear my doorbell, but another activity is called I used to think, but now I think. So here we go. So it would be looking, I used to think about something. So imagine we're looking at crimes and criminals. So I used to think this, but then once we've looked at the whole unit, we now think perhaps something different. So looking at how we're going to organize the way we're thinking. And then we're coming on to the final one now, which is arts and objects, okay? So the first one is called 10 times 2. So imagine we have a picture. It could be a picture from a course book. It could be an artistic picture, a photograph, anything that you like, even a personal photograph, one of the students or you. We look at the image quietly. Yeah, for at least 30 seconds, letting your eyes wander. And then very quietly, we list down 10 words or phrases that just come to our mind, not necessarily naming vocabulary we can see, but just things that provoke a response. And then we repeat the steps again. We look again, can we see anything more? We can add in discussion perhaps with a partner. This also works with listening as well. We might want to listen to sounds, or might want to listen to people talking, accents, and we might want to just then generate our vocabulary from there. Beginning, middle, and end is an activity where if we have a photo or picture, if it's art that perhaps is the beginning of a story, we're asking our students to identify what happens next. If it's art that is in the middle of a story, you know, what might have happened before, what might happen after. And if we're at the end of the story, you know, what might the ending be if you're looking at this image? What do you think will be the final conclusion? So we've gone through lots of different visible thinking routines, and I just want to end with you now with final considerations before you run off and implement all of them in your class. My big advice to you is go slowly and introduce one routine at a time. So whichever one has been your favorite today, off you go. Have a go at doing it. Once the students know the routine, all you have to say is those 3 or 4 words, for example, stop, look, listen, and students know automatically, oh, we're doing the stop, look, listen activity, great. And they get into partners and they do it themselves. But you've got to go slowly. They've got to learn each routine slowly, one by one. Think about the language the students will need. So if they're speculating about pictures or they're doing their I wonder questions, you might want to give them some vocabulary or sentence starters to help them discuss their points of view. And also do think about your interaction patterns. Are students doing it by themselves, with a partner, with a big group, a small group? Are they going to be rotating? Okay. And also the materials. Are they all going to be working on the whiteboard, you know, and writing down a word for you? Are they all going to come and put a sticky note on a poster? Are they going to be doing worksheets? Are they simply going to be discussing? And that's up to you to decide. And of course, please go to the internet to help you. Look up Project Zero, Harvard University. You'll find all of these ideas and more. And of course, all the websites that I've talked about today. Lots of teachers have already set up lovely activities, and there's no reason why we can't share our ideas as well there and pick up ideas from others. So to conclude, we have covered what is visible thinking, when we think we should be implementing them in class and at what stage of the lesson. And then we've looked at well, I think many ideas to try in class and some exciting websites for us to check out as well. So thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you have any questions, please pop your question in the chat box and I'll try to answer it. Thank you very much.